What you are missing is that the culture around this industry is gone because there's no economic support. There's no factories, there's no dads, there's no marketing endeavor. It doesn't exist anymore. It's in China. So in China, skateboarding is exploding like crazy. In Japan, they're launching TV shows for skateboarding. And today in the United States, we don't even have the big skateboard contests anymore. They're failing and falling apart, and all the top pros are just little Japanese kids. Now, I got no beef with the Japanese kids. Some of the best skateboarders, they're all Japanese. I'm pissed off that the country that made this, that invented it, that inspired the world, gave it all away. And now where I live, in my home country, for the life of me, well, actually, I'll say this. One of the advantages to it is that I can go to a pro skateboarder and give them $500 and they'll come and they'll produce content because they're so desperate for money. And what I tell all these guys, we stopped doing our games of skate events because of security issues. We're working on trying to figure out how to do them again. We told the pros you get $3,000 if you win, and you get a guarantee just for showing up. And they all show up and they beg to come and compete because these guys are working at Home Depot. They're working for Uber Eats. They're driving cars. This is an Olympic sport. Now there's very few people left.
Would you want to have government support for this industry where they get subsidies?
Nope. I would like the government to say, if you move your factory to China, we will charge you 30% on the way back in so that you will not be competitive in the marketplace.
I think it's two different things. The competitiveness of the skateboard itself and then the industry of skateboarding. It's similar to like, are bikes cheap to make? Are they Chinese bikes? But then the cycling community and the cycling industry and cycling for the Olympics and stuff. Is it necessary? It's not a direct relationship. It's more of a correlationary relationship.
It's a direct relationship. There's a famous photo of a man in a suit in the 1960s, I believe it was, riding a little fish board, one of the OG skateboards in Central Park. It's a great mystery to figure out who this man is, and no one really knows. That event that became iconic, where it's like a guy in a suit and he's like cruising, was because a company that made skateboards announced they were having an event in Central Park and encouraged everyone to come. They told families, they told kids, they went and promoted it in New York City, and then everyone showed up. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people showed up, and skateboarding started to get more and more popular in the United States. The factories and the companies are gone.
And
one of the biggest brands.
I want to make sure I understand this. Mm-hmm. So they were like $50 boards here. They're $35 in China. And because the boards are cheaper in China, the industry's just imploded here?
Yes.
And no one, but people can still buy it. The people, because you don't have to make your own board.
Yep. So you can order your Chinese-made board owned by what I would call a vapor brand. So some of the biggest brands in skateboarding have collapsed. All the skateboard companies are going out of business because I would refer to them as vapor companies. They slap a logo on a board made in China and then tell people to order it on the internet. The only problem is there's no one. Okay, you have a factory, right? It's 1960. You have a wood shop and you make skateboards. You say, how can we sell more of these? You got to get kids to skate. So what do? You go to the park, you pop up some tents, you give out free lemonade and ice cream, and you say, try this skateboard. The kids are all excited and ecstatic, and the parents go, I think I'll get some of these for my kids. And so they buy a bunch. Well, now you don't have any factories, you don't have any shops.
They can still, so the boards are cheaper now than they were when it was made in America?
Indeed.
And the result is there's fewer people skateboarding?
Yes. See, this is what I was saying about people who don't understand the economic chain. They simply look at the numbers improve, so what's the problem? The problem is when a guy shows up to a wood shop and says, I don't know nothing about skateboarding. You say, well, we need someone who knows wood. I certainly know wood. How would you like a job at a wood shop? I'd love one. Then he goes home with some samples and he gives them to his kids. And his kids go to their friends, and their friends say, wow, I like this. Let's do more. Now this man working at the factory starts talking to his neighbors. I work in a wood shop. We do skateboarding. Hey, it's an Olympic sport. We're actually sponsoring some of the Olympic athletes. It's big. Then a rival company pops up and says the kids can't get enough of these things. We need a new factory. All those factories are gone. There's no longer a guy going to his kid. There's no longer a company going to the park. The demos don't exist. And one of the biggest brands in American skateboard history moved to Japan.
My guess would be that if you were to buy a keyboard today, like a piano keyboard, you're probably going to get a Casio or something like that. I don't think that we've had like a limited amount of people learning piano, or to use the woodshop example, like guitars are still abundant. People are still playing guitar. I don't know where they come from. It wouldn't surprise me if they're not from the United States.
I think the issue around something like skateboarding is that it's decently new relative to, say, like piano, which has been around and is global. And there's tremendous opportunity. What I would still argue, though, is as someone who is not a pianist, I can only refer to the things in which I'm involved in, and I can stress the same thing is happening in other industries. So I can cite surfing, snowboarding, and skiing as being massively impacted by foreign manufacturing.
And it's because the boards are lesser quality, so people aren't skating as much?
It's because there's no culture anymore.
Okay.
So do you know how culture works?
Yeah, but I don't want the government propping up culture. Like I think like I don't want the government punishing other people for making economic choices.
Why is it? What do you mean punishing other people?
Because you're taxing me for buying a cheaper skateboard.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think you should do that. And I like to back up a little bit. I question this whole idea that it's a lack of tariffs and protectionism that's resulted in lack of American manufacturing. So like you look at like no one does this with farmers. Like if you go back to like 1880, 90% of the American workforce was farmers. Like it's not because we started importing food that we do. It's because we got really, really good at making food. So my uncle's a farmer. He's basically like an agronomist.
Let's go macro. Let's go macro.
Yeah.
Tell me about Detroit.
Detroit with manufacturing, I'd say has more to do with unions and with just the cost of manufacturing cars in general.
Why are people? Right. So agreed. So if we stopped allowing companies to move their factories to Mexico or Indonesia or other countries, it would be a little bit more expensive, but there would be a bustling auto industry in Michigan.
So like let's kind of stick with that for a minute. So like steel, for example. Steel is one of the things Trump talks about regularly.
Yeah.
We export more steel now than we did in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. The difference is we need fewer people to do the steel. We came up with better innovations for it.
Indeed.
And therefore we have fewer people working in it. But the actual exports are fine. With cars, like most of the cars we get in the United States, even if they're foreign, like Kia, Toyota, whatever, they're manufactured here in the United States by American workers. You can buy stock. No?
No, I mean, Donald Trump's famous, Michael Moore's famous speech of Donald Trump in his 2016 campaign was that he went to the auto manufacturers and said, if you move your factories to Mexico or China, I will slap a 30% tariff on your vehicle and no one will buy it. And it was the first time someone stood up for the workers. We have watched Michigan deteriorate in psychotic ways. Flint, Michigan being an amazing example of what happens when you gut the manufacturing base. So yes, one could argue with innovations in travel and transport and cheap fuel specifically, we've been able to move manufacturing to other countries through these free trade agreements. So what ends up happening is if you're a family who lives in Michigan, hey, it's like that movie Tommy Boy. Remember that one? The brake pad factory goes, the whole town goes. I like to go to cities, or I should say this. When I go to cities, I like to ask the locals, what is the basis of their economy? For what purpose does this town actually exist? And you'll find out really interesting things. You know, in Seattle, for instance, a lot of timber. People don't know that, but what is the economic driver of the Pacific Northwest? All the lumber work that gets done gets spent in these states setting up shop. So, for example, if I find a gold in the ground, and then I'm like, I need to hire 100 people to get the gold out of the ground, you get a pop-up city. Well, what happens? Someone says these people are hungry, opens a restaurant, and so then towns form. In Michigan, something really interesting happens. You're familiar with the Flint water crisis.
Yeah.
That's a direct result of sending our auto manufacturing to Mexico and other countries and importing cheap vehicles.
I'm unfamiliar with that. Walk me through.
So what happens is in Michigan, you have a water distribution apparatus, the city water supply of Detroit. When you divide the fixed cost of water distribution among, say, 1 million people, I'm going to use vague numbers because actual numbers get wonky. Let's say you have 1 million people, and it costs everybody $100 a month for their water bills in their homes. That's not so bad, right? I mean, it can be heavy for your house, but it's just $100. So if the economy is stable, you're going to be able to afford it. Well, the manufacturing leaves, and this means we begin to see a mass exodus from Michigan. Something like, I think in the 2000s, it was like 11 families per minute were leaving the state. This means the tax base is eroded, but the fixed cost of the water delivery system remains static. Overnight, an individual receives double the water bill. That's something you just can't afford. It's a shock charge, especially when, as the auto manufacturing leaves, there's less money coming into your city, state, or town, less tax revenue for social services and public roads, and less money in general being spent on restaurants and toys, whatever it might be that drives an economy.
They got to shut off parts of town. They got to, they can't
provide
services.
You get a water bill you can't afford. So what did Flint say? Why are we paying the most expensive water bill in the country for Detroit water when we can use Flint River water, which was contaminated with Legionnaire's disease and started running water through pipes, which got everybody super sick? It is unfortunate.
If they'd wanted to relocate their factory to Louisiana, should that have been legal?
Yes.
Okay. It would have caused the same problem, though, right? Like Flint would have had the same issue?
Not necessarily.
Why not?
The issue with Mexico is you have to compete with no union wages. You have to compete with no minimum wages. You have to compete with no health care. And you have to compete with cartels running a lot of sweatshops, or I should just say illegal activities, easy way to explain it. At least Louisiana would have to present to the auto manufacturer legal and justified competition to which Michigan can counter.
My point is just if they were to relocate elsewhere in America, you'd still have that kind of collapse of services because you'd have fewer people.
Ignoring the fact, no, wrong. Because in the United States, we have federal laws on manufacturing and distribution. So Mexico,
well, there's lots of businesses that leave from California to Texas.
Certainly they do.
From the Northeast to the Sun Belt.
And I have no problem with states in a stable system trying to be competitive with one another.
Do you think it would be preferential if they all had tariffs between each other? I mean, if it's good to build up the local economy, wouldn't it be beneficial to have these protectionist measures internally?
And there have been arguments made, such as in Ithaca, New York, if you're familiar with the Ithaca Hour,
no.
Largely fallen into disuse, but they created a local currency which lasted for about 20 years that could only be used in Ithaca, and it was called the Ithaca Hour, representing an hour of labor, and people could choose to be paid in hours or in U.S. dollars. And in fact, it actually helped boost the economy.
I would be fine with that if you wanted to have like alternate currencies.
And the point of the currency is that it can't leave the jurisdiction. So you can make the argument that Louisiana can offer to compete by going to an auto manufacturer and saying, we're going to cut you 5% on taxes. Michigan can then say, we will too. But the one thing you can't compete on is peasant labor, which is impossible, especially with unions. So, of course, these factories want to generate profits. You move the auto manufacturing out of the state, the economy gets depressed. This idea that we would be a service sector economy is insane, or even worse, that we would be a cultural economy when we're literally bleeding our culture out across the planet and doing nothing to protect it.
We're not a service economy or only a service economy. We're still a manufacturing powerhouse. We have been. It never went away. The difference is that we shifted from like low wage stuff, the peasant labor that you're talking about, to high end stuff like building airplanes, computer parts, things like that. I would rather have a high end manufacturing industry than a low end manufacturing.
This is all macro graph go up argument that ignores the fact that cultures, families, traditions, and our country is gutted and eroded. By all means, if you want to live in a plastic jumpsuit, shaven-headed society, let's roll, baby. We'll all see short-term gains as what makes the soul of our nation function dies.
What I want to do is maximize people being able to make free choices and not have top-down command economies. So I am fine with you. If you find a better deal, I'm fine with you taking that deal. Again, we'll carve out slave labor and things like that. But in terms of just being able to have a competitive economy, be as competitive as you like.
Do you know where our aluminum comes from?
No.
It comes from Canada.
Okay.
Canada has no bauxite mines. They have cheap labor.
Okay.
And so instead of building our own aluminum refineries, being more energy efficient, we import aluminum from Canada, who imports their raw materials, bauxite, which refines into alumina and then aluminum in Canada, when the United States very well could have their own very cheap aluminum produced in country. We have bauxite mines in Louisiana.
Why don't we just do that then? If it's cheaper from Canada, buy it.
Because the worldview that you espouse, why buy it from Canada if it's cheaper?
If it's cheaper, get it. Yeah. Like spend the money on something here.
We have gutted our refineries. We have gutted our manufacturing base for a fake argument. That is, instead of building nuclear reactors and hydroelectric plants so that we can do it here cheap,
I'm with you there.
We're actually spending more for Canada to do it.
Hey, I'm all in favor of nuclear power. And you will make the
argument, yeah, but it's cheaper.
Yeah. Look. Yep. I'm on Team Consumer. If you can get a cheaper thing, go for it. You can
and if we lock down some tariffs and block out these countries and start doing it ourselves, everything will be cheaper.
Why don't we just do that? Do you think the country would be better if instead of the Commerce Clause, all the states could enact tariffs? Do you think we would be more economically viable?
No.
Okay, there you are. Like I don't think that would benefit. I think it's more beneficial when you can get cheap parts from various places. You can get cheap labor from various places. It ends up making everything less costly, and it allows different regions to focus on what they're productive at.
And you're
able to take that excess money and put it into other things.
You're not asking about what the long-term end result of that is going to be. I am talking about the spirit of our country, what it means to believe in constitutional republicanism, and you are saying, but we'll make money.
Well, I think part of that republicanism right there is the idea of doing whatever you want as long as you don't hurt anybody else. Like,
No, that's classical liberalism.
yeah, and that's what the country was founded on, was classical liberalism, and the idea that you are a free citizen, you can engage in free activities, whether they're sexual or corporate, with whoever you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody else.
Well, there is a debate long-term over imports and exports and tariffs. And more importantly, if we want to get into an argument over what the founding fathers thought when the country had 4 million people in it, 13 colonies, and imports were substantially limited due to the difficulty of travel, we're talking about something entirely different from gigantic cargo vessels traveling the whole world and undercutting the economies and cultures of the countries for which they are.
You know what? I'm always open to arguments of scaling, but like that did take place at a backdrop of mercantilism. The idea of mercantilism was well known. What you're describing is mercantilism. What Trump is a mercantilist. Like that was well known at the time.
So the point I'm bringing up is, with a subculture, particularly like skateboarding, and this is, again, there's also snowboarding, there's surfing. Everyone's complaining about very similar things. The United States is hollowing itself out. It's pumping out money to foreign countries because they will always have cheaper labor. We now have houses people can't afford. We are not producing enough. We never were, ever since the petrodollar got kicked into gear after with the liberal economic order. You've got Gen Z that can't buy anything. There's no low skill labor for which a young man or woman can get a job to actually be competitive. And at the same time, we're opening the borders to non-citizens who are effectively taking a lot of our low skill labor. This is the end if this continues. And hey, I mean, those of us that are rich are going to enjoy it all the way down until we invest in China and GTFO.
All right, there's a bunch of things to unpack there. Okay, so in terms of the rising housing costs, I would say the principal reason that housing is getting more expensive is that we restrict supply. Like America doesn't have a housing policy or an investment policy where we want everybody's house to raise in value forever.
Well, housing housing prices just went down for the first time in a long time, and sales have actually
that's great. No, that's terrific. And there's going to be variation day to day, right? But like the principal reason houses are expensive is not because of free trade; it's because we restrict how much houses can be built. Like that's the main thing. It's restriction of supply.
How does that make sense when you have a plethora of houses for sale today and people aren't buying them?
You've got about 2% of the housing market right now of like multiple houses that people own that nobody's living in. Mm-hmm. But when you look at any map of any major city in the United States, 80% of it is zoned for single family occupancy. Mm-hmm. And so it's illegal to build a duplex.
There are houses for sale that are not moving right now.
Yeah, well, we still got high interest rates. And then on top of that, like you're maintaining a property that you think is going to increase in value.
Yep.
You may not want to leave in it, right? So I'm not. This is sort of a side argument, but housing, I think, like fairly indisputably, is going up largely because of supply problems. We need more houses.
I completely disagree with that.
No,
there's so many houses for sale right now. It's a buyer's market, but we've got a lot. I think one of the principal arguments as to why houses cost too much is that people are living longer, and boomers who own, on average, I think they own like 1.7 houses or something, whatever the number is. You've got a small 80% of boomers own homes, and then a small percentage own multiple homes, and then a small percentage own quite a few. Gen Xers, around 72%, own a single home. Millennials, 50%. And Gen Z, it's something like 17% or less. Why can't Gen Z, in their 20s, have a house and have a family?
When you look at wages have increased since the 1970s, but prices have increased for healthcare, college, and housing. Those are the three things that have gone up. Everything else has gone down. Food's gone down. Consumer goods, gadgets, they've all gone down, right? So people are actually earning more than they did in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s across age cohorts. But prices for those three things have increased. So like...
Why?
Because of restriction of supply with housing. With healthcare is a complicated issue. I would say that it's a combination of regulatory malfeasance combined with the fact that we have sort of state-by-state monopolies that we allow rather than competition to exist. And it's this huge morass of regulations that are in there. In terms of college, I would say that college is because we went from a college degree is a nice thing to have, and some people are going to have it in 1950, like 2% of people had a graduate degree, maybe 6% had an undergraduate degree. But in the 1980s, we went, everybody has to get a college degree. If you don't get a college degree, you're a loser and you don't get to be part of the social pyramid, right? With a college degree, if it's a positional good that's predicated on the value being other people don't have it, you can't equalize it. The value can't be egalitarian. So we pushed everybody into that system. You also have a limited amount of college spots that are available, but you have people coming in, and you have money coming in, capital coming in. Too much money chasing too few goods is going to increase the price. You're going to cause inflation there. So college, we pump too much money into it in terms of student loans and things like that. The federal government has...
we agree on that one.
Yeah, okay, great. So college there.
College is a waste of time and nobody should go. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.